For most of us, our outer tie rod ends are only of interest if we need to lubricate them, test them, replace them, or align the front wheels. Let's look briefly at each of those four things. But before we do, often here at the Moss Motors Technical Services Department, we'll get phone calls from people who'll say, I bought a brand new set of tie rod ends and it's got this plastic thing on here. Do I leave this on or do I take this off? That's a good question. The answer is simple. When you get the new tie rod ends, they're going to have this cap. There's going to be a nut on the end. Remove the nut, remove the cap, and take it away. You can discard it, okay? All this does is it protects this boot during shipping. Once you reseat it and it's ready to go in the car where it's going to be protected anyway, this is no longer necessary, so go ahead and get rid of it. Now let's talk about lubrication. For years, for decades, tie rod ends would have a grease fitting, perhaps on the side here someplace or on the bottom here, and that was for lubricating these. If you had a grease fitting on here and you had a little grease gun, it was easy. It was a 2-minute job. You just simply took a little shop towel, cleaned the dirt off the grease fitting, put the little end of your grease gun on, 2 pumps, you were done. It was all over with. Once in a while, we'd have a problem, and that would be because somebody would say, well, if 2 pumps is good, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 pumps is great. It doesn't work that way. We're only going to put enough grease in here to do the job. When they put too much grease in here, it goes up and fills this boot, and the boot is either going to burst or become dislodged. Either way, we're in trouble. 2 pumps is great. That's all you're going to need for this. Now then, somebody might be looking at the video and say, well, wait a minute, there are no grease fittings on that. And that's true. The reason for that is that most all the new manufacturers of these parts are making them without grease fittings. They're permanently lubricated. They're maintenance free. You're going to receive it, take it out of the box, install it, and that's it. You will never have to grease these. And they hold up just fine. So if there's no grease fittings, don't worry about it. If you have a car that still has grease fittings, you know how to take care of it. Now, replacement will be called for if the tie rod end is worn out or if the dust boot right there is either dislodged or torn. Now please note, even if the tie rod itself, the tie rod end right here, if this is still in good shape, it's solid, there's no play in there, if this is torn or damaged by now road grit and sand has gotten in there, this is terminally ill. You have to replace it. Now an individual might disagree and say, no, you can replace just the boot. Moss sells them. There's one right there, and it's easy. There's a snap ring and a snap ring. Take it off, put the new one on, and you're done. Well, that's partially true, but partially wrong. Okay? These exist for one purpose. Okay? Imagine that your tie rod end is in good condition, the boot is in good condition, and you're servicing your car, and the instructions in the shop manual say you have to disconnect this. Well, if you're going to disconnect this, you're going to find you have a problem. I've got one here. I've taken the boot off so you can see it. And see how the shaft is tapered right there? So when this is installed and it's pulled up tight, okay, the nut is on here, this tapered shaft is inside a tapered hole. And they marry each other in there, and they don't want to let go. So when you take the nut off, it's not going to want to come off. The way to service that is they have a tool called a pickle fork. And this is the common way it's done. You'll have your piece in there, you take your nut off, they'll put the pickle fork in from the side, it's heavy, it's made out of iron, and see how it's tapered? When this is in and they hammer on it like that, it's going to force this to come down. Easy. But now imagine that you've got this pickle fork, and you've got your nice boot in here, and you put the pickle fork in, and you start hammering on it, and it starts pushing down. What's going to happen to this boot? It's probably going to be destroyed. So, if the car boot was in fine shape when the car came in for you to service it, if the inside here, the mechanical part is all fine, and you damaged the boot in the shop, there's no sand, there's no road grit in there. In that case, you can replace just the boot that you damaged while you were working on it, and you're fine. But that's what the only purpose is for this. Now, a person can ask, can I test my tie rod ends? Yes, you can test them. Testing is an important safety step. Testing a tie rod end is easier than many people think. And this is important. If you decide, okay, I'm going to test my tie rod ends, if yours have grease fittings and you have a grease gun, do not pre-grease these before you run the test. We're going to find out in a minute that there's going to be play inside a worn tie rod end. And if you've just packed it with fresh grease, the play might be hidden. So you want to test it the way that it was going down the road this morning. Okay? So now then, what do? The car is on level ground. We secure the handbrake. The motor's off. We want the front wheels pointing forward as if we were going along a long, straight road. Have a helper sitting in the car moving the steering wheel back and forth, left, right, in a gesture like that. As the steering wheel is moving left, right, the front wheels are going to follow. They'll be pivoting left, right, left, right. If a tie rod end is worn, you'll see slack. Let me show you that. This is the tie rod end, and if I lean it over, you can see there's a ball at the bottom of this. There it is. It's riding inside a cup in here. So then, as long as the ball and the cup are fine, everything's good. But if they begin to wear out and it's moving back and forth, you'll see this going on right there. That tells you that tie rod end needs to be replaced. It's easy. Now, once in a while, you might not be able to see the tie rod end. So these cars are pretty close to the ground, and sometimes the tie rod end is hidden on the other side of the wheel. So if that's the case, there's no problem. There's another way to do this. Okay? Again, don't pre-grease the tie rod ends. Now, set your parking brake on a floor. Take a floor jack and put it underneath where the lower control arms, the lower wishbone arms come together, okay, right there at the bottom under the swivel pin of the lower ball joint. And lift the wheel just a little bit off the ground, just enough so she's not touching. Now, with that one wheel barely off the ground, rotate the steering wheel all the way to one side or the other. It makes no difference right now. As the wheels move left or right, the tie rod end on the wheel you've lifted will become visible. It's behind the tire there. Now, hold the tire with your hands, one at the 9 o'clock position, one at the 3 o'clock position, and do this with the wheel. As you do that, there's going to be pressure on this back and forth, and again, you'll see the play if it's there, and you won't if it's not. Nice and easy. Now, how is a tie rod end replaced? Okay, there are lots of YouTube videos on how to replace a tie rod end, and this technician is not going to reinvent the wheel here. But I'm going to point out one thing that I want you to know. The way that this is threaded onto this shaft, this is the tie rod end, this is the tie rod, you'll see that the tie rod end is threaded way down inside there. And this here is inside up in here, and it's like that. This is how we align the front end of the car. Okay? So then, if we're going to replace this with a new one, we need to get it back in the same place, or the alignment's going to be out. An easy way to do it, take a ruler, lay one end of the ruler at the middle of the tie rod. So right there, this isn't rocket science, so don't worry about it. Right about as close as you can get to the middle. Pick a number along here where it's aligned with something you can get to, and I'm going to choose the 5, and I'm just going to make a little mark right there. Okay, now, take 2 wrenches, hold here, crack here, and undo this jam nut, and now it's as easy as changing a light bulb. They just come right off. It's easy. So you're going to take this all the way off. You're going to get your new one, thread it on, and when you think the new one is more or less where it should be, you put it in the car like that. Take your ruler again, set your ruler. If the mark aligns up with where you want it to be, great. If you need to go in a little bit more, turn it a little more. If it has to come out a little bit more like that, turn it out a little bit like that. It's just that easy. Okay. And lastly, let's talk about alignment. Okay. Contrary to popular belief, the front wheels of our cars do not point straight ahead. Okay? They're usually pointing a tiny bit toward the middle, like that. Okay? This is called toe in. It's because as you're standing and looking at it, it looks like you're looking at your toes and they're turned in a little bit. Okay, it's a perfect name. Toe in helps the car to track better on a straight road. So your shop manual is going to tell you how much toe in is correct for your car and where to measure it. That's where this long threaded shaft is for. So if I have to adjust my alignment or check my alignment, what I'm going to do, imagine this is installed. I can't turn this anymore, but this rotates. So I'm going to use my wrenches, loosen my jam nut, and then I can take this, and by turning it this way, it's going to push this out and change the toe in of the wheel, or turn it in the other way, it'll pull it in this way. We do the 2 wheels as recommended, and we're taken care of. So we've learned that we can lubricate, we can test, we can replace, and we can align using these tie rod ends. A pair of tie rod ends is inexpensive. It costs roughly what a pizza costs. So this testing is part of routine safety and an inexpensive maintenance for our classic British cars.